Hello and welcome to the Surgical Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haidar Al-hakim, the Third Eye Doctor. Pull up a chair and get ready for some candid and uncompromising discussion with experts, innovators, agitators, and influential people from every corner of health and well-being. From inside the hospital to at home in the kitchen, we're leaving no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the secrets of healthier, happier, more successful, and less stressful lives. Thank you so much for joining us, and without further ado, let's meet this episode's guest. Hello, Paul. How are you today?
Hi, Haidar. I'm very, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, thanks for coming along. I mean, it's been over a year since we last had you on, and COVID came along.
Yes,
You know, this crazy thing, and I remember when it first kind of came out, and I was saying, it's all probably conspiracy theory, and you were like, no, they came in, they told us about it, they gave us presentations, they told us about the science of the virus. So now it's been a year and a half since it's sort of come into your work life and also personal life. How has your views changed about the virus and the pandemic?
Firstly, it has been a bit difficult year. I think my views are still very much the same in terms of we've got this thing, and there's certain ways we can help to deal with it. The thing that has changed is the sympathy and empathy I have for people that are getting more and more fed up with it. So, for example, when I first started, when it first came along, and we were in PPE 24/7 in intensive care, seeing things that really we shouldn't have been seeing, just seeing these people, young and old, suffering horrendously with this virus that we knew very little about, listening to the things that you'd hear online, and the conspiracy theories and all of this. It was very, very difficult to finish work and then be subjected to that. It was like, you have no idea. That was my thought process, and I had very little sympathy. As time's gone on, I don't believe in the conspiracy side of things and what have you, but I do understand why people just want to get back to normal. Initially it was like, look, just stay indoors. That's all you've got to do. Just stay indoors. And as time's gone on, obviously, as we've had to abide by those rules as well, you realize just how much it impacts your life. And initially, it didn't feel like that to us, because we were still, and still are, going to work. We were still even though work itself wasn't normal, our actual day-to-day, waking up, going to work, coming home, having a day off, that was relatively unchanged. So my life didn't really change horrendously with COVID, as much as it would, say, someone who has a 9-to-5 office job, who had to then be subjected to staying at home. And obviously, as time's gone on, those things do catch up with us, and that social side of life has gone. And so I do have a lot more empathy for people that say, look, I just want this to be over now. I'm a little bit more tolerant of that.
And in terms of the science of the virus and the pathology of the virus, what can you tell us about it? What is new about it that you understand now that you didn't before?
I think the fundamentals are pretty much the same, in terms of, look, we've got this virus, and as all viruses do, they mutate. I'm still of the opinion that there's I might be proven wrong in this. This is just my own thoughts, and just from certain things that I've read, that I think there is an element of viral load being a factor in it. So, for example, someone that gets sneezed on directly, I think will have worse symptoms than, say, someone who just, say, contracts it by touching a surface and then touching their face. The viral load is different. I think, all the viruses I think of, even if I think of things like HIV and all those things, it is very dependent on viral load. And whilst I haven't seen the literature for it for a long time now, I still believe there's an element of that. And viruses do mutate. We know this. The virus wants to survive, and viruses are ingenious at being able to do so. So they do mutate and find a way of continuing to spread. So that explains the variants that we get. Ultimately, there is a thought that I was listening to someone the other day chatting about, and it was quite interesting because ultimately the virus wants to stay alive, and so if it kills everyone off, there's no vessel for it to stay alive in, and so there has to eventually become a equilibrium in terms of variant
killing and maintaining,
killing and maintain. And so there will, I believe there will probably be a balance at some point. But with each strain, we're seeing slightly different characteristics. So the first one was very much one, because we didn't really know what we were doing on the whole scheme of things. We were quite in the blind with it. We'd never seen anything really quite like it. So we were seeing the vulnerable, we were seeing elderly, we were seeing people with a lot of comorbidities, with other illnesses, developing the virus. And as time's gone on, I think the second wave, we were seeing more and more younger people. And I think that was probably reflected on the fact that universities had reopened. And that strain seemed to definitely hit the younger as well. And so we were seeing 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, fit and well, in intensive care. Now with the third wave, anecdotally, just from where I am, it seems like even though cases are rising, it hasn't reflected in the same way that the first two waves did in terms of the hospital. People are getting admitted, but they're not coming into intensive care as readily. We are still getting them, but and my belief for that is the vaccine program has definitely helped. Time will tell. We're still a few weeks away of seeing whether it's going to really impact. But just looking at, I follow the graphs quite a lot, and just looking at those, just objectively, it just looks like it's doing something.
And in terms of the role of immunity in the pandemic, where does that fit in?
So there's two schools of thought in that. So if you've had the virus, you've got the antibodies. That could potentially be as good. I've heard things that's as good, or if not better, than the antibodies you'll get from the vaccine, say. And that may well be the case. I don't know. I think definitely having the antibodies on board will help. Just being able to limit that immediate that huge immune response that you get, and it seemed to be that's what was causing problems, really. It was the lungs, especially, people getting these massive immune responses. So it was leading to a lot of consolidation in the lungs and all these small clots microclots in the kidneys and all these things. It seemed to be like this whole systemic response, and I think anything that can subdue that, be it with antibodies that you've had from a vaccine or from previous infection, then that's going to help. But the question is, if you haven't had either, is it then going to protect you? And the people that we've been seeing in intensive care and things like that, a lot of them were unvaccinated, with no previous history of the virus, as it were. On occasion, that's not 100%, but just the general rule of thumb, that seems to be what's happening.
And us being healthcare professionals who haven't really isolated over the last year and a half. I mean, all of us have had to take 2 or 3 weeks off because of the COVID itself, which we've all contracted. I think everyone in the healthcare sector has contracted COVID over the last year and a half.
Well, oddly enough, we were. I mean, I managed to escape it.
All right.
But I can only put that down to the fact that because I was in intensive care so much, or anaesthetizing in theatre so much, we were always wore FFP3 masks, and so not like say some of the wards where there was guidance on just wearing normal surgical masks because you weren't doing a aerosol generated procedure, as it were. And my argument was that they're coughing and spluttering all over the place. I mean, how much more aerosol generated do you need to be? And so actually, ITU seemed to be one of the safer places to be as a healthcare professional because you were always in your PPE. So does PPE work? Yeah, 100%. I'm very sure of that, just from seeing the people that I was working with and seeing how low the infection rate amongst the healthcare professionals in intensive care was, where I was working at least. I definitely think there's something to say for it.
And going back to the immunity side of things, I mean, being exposed to it is one thing, and then developing antibodies to it, that's the kind of normal response that we think about. But in terms of improving one's immunity, do you think that has a role in combating?
Yeah, I'll be honest. So
I mean, it's not really what we're trained to do, really, is.
Yeah, so
we don't talk about increasing one's immunity.
For the record, I'm not an immunologist or a microbiologist, so I'm sure there'll be, if there are immunologists and microbiologists listening to this, they'll be thinking, what is this guy talking about? But just from my own sort of limited understanding of
You're too modest, mate. What are you talking about?
Well, no, I mean, I'm an anaesthetist. It's it's not something that we.
But you're a good observer.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. So and we do have our own thoughts and things. And from my side, yeah, I think there is something to be said about improving your immune system for sure. I don't think that's and COVID aside, that's always a good thing. And it does help. And the thing is, I haven't read much on. I'm sure there are now studies and things like that. I've kind of distanced myself a little bit in the last few months from reading up on it. It kind of saturated my brain a bit, reading all the new COVID things and things like that. But it wouldn't surprise me if there is some evidence for, look, if you do this, have your vitamins, have your vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc, and all these things, it's gonna help. I don't know in reality how much of an impact it makes, but do I think it would help? I'm pretty sure it would.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't gone out actively and increased your vitamin C intake or vitamin D intake or
I was actually
other vitamins. Yeah,
I was taking vitamin D for a little while, actually, just because I thought I should, because I wasn't getting much in terms of outdoor life. So I was taking just the sort of one a day tablet, and that may have helped. And vitamin C, I try to take it in through diet in terms of fruit and things like that. But I did buy some sort of chewable vitamin C tablets, and I was having one of those a day as well. It was maybe, whether it was placebo effect or not, it made me feel better taking it. I just wanted to, at the time, seeing it was very difficult because we were being surrounded by it. I mean, it was so many people being intubated, ventilated, and I kind of just wanted to do the most I could do. This was before the vaccines, by the way, so I just wanted to do as much as I could do to help protect myself and my family. And I thought, if it works, great. If it doesn't, so what, kind of thing. So yeah.
And how has the morale been within the workforce, within your colleagues, over the
Yeah,
months, and how has it
it's
changed?
it's it's definitely hanging over, in terms of our. It almost feels like things will never go back to how they were, and when
And they
you
weren't great before.
they weren't great before. That's true. It's very true. They
You know,
weren't
I mean,
fantastic
if
before.
people look back to our podcast, you know, it wasn't that rosy then
No,
before the
no,
pandemic.
no, not at all. It was, and then COVID came along, and yeah, everyone's morale during COVID. It was phenomenal just how the camaraderie between everyone was. That was, I've never seen something quite like it. So within ourselves, in terms of the ITU doctors, that we were redeployed, and so there was quite a few of us, because we were all redeployed from anaesthetics. There were obviously the existing ITU doctors, and between us, the morale, we just kept boosting each other. So we were put on a road that was, as I think every intensive care unit in the country was, put on this sort of surge rota, which meant, your leave was cancelled and all these, and you had to do these shifts now to try and keep the same, a good number of people on the shop floor, as it were. And that was tough, and people were very accommodating with each other. So if there was a time where, look, I need this shift swapped or whatever, everyone really bent over backwards for each other, to help out. And there were things that, we were getting some food parcels and things from certain local companies and local businesses, and those little things helped. In terms of now, I think people are relieved that things are improving. You can feel that there's this air of uncertainty now, given that the cases are rising now, and where I think yesterday was 36,000 new cases, which we haven't seen since quite some time. So things are going up, and there's an air of uncertainty in terms of what's this going to translate to. Are we going to get something even bigger than we had before? And so we're very heavily dependent on vaccines at the moment. We're just sort of fingers crossed. Yeah.
Is there some kind of strategy sort of going forward, or is it still let's keep capacity as high as possible and wait for the tsunami?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know, because we initially, we after the first one, it was like, we're never going to go back to this again. Whatever happens, we're going to just deal with it. And then the second wave came, and even though it wasn't as bad for us as the first, we had more people, more patients, but because we kind of had a system and we kind of knew how to deal with it, and we didn't redeploy people for the sake of redeployment, which I felt was happening in the first one. So we tried to keep as much as normal as possible, working alongside. It was tough, but we managed to try and do it. In terms of the third wave, I think now with increasing waiting lists, and because let's not forget, it's not just patients who have COVID. It's thousands of other people, hundreds of thousands, who are being affected, in terms of just routine operations and routine outpatients and routine procedures, and it's very difficult for them. And the more we postpone things for the sake of COVID, it's impacting other people, and dare I say, it's causing other deaths, other problems elsewhere, in medicine. So I'd hope that we can find a way of maintaining as much normality in terms of routine things as possible. Whether we can or not will just purely depend on the numbers.
Yeah. So there is some kind of common camaraderie that you sensed during the difficult times. but it kind of disappears once things go back to normal, which is a bit frustrating, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think we've been through so much together as a
Yeah.
hospital. We those things kind of don't really. It hasn't vanished. As in, it's like, look, when something difficult comes, it's like, look, we've managed to do this, so
Yeah.
let's find a way of working this out, kind of thing. And it did show just what can be achieved
Yeah.
When all the frivolous stuff gets thrown out the window, so it's like, on occasion I get told off for writing if I forgot to change my ink in my pen. I like to write in fountain pen, and I usually write in black, but occasionally I've forgotten, would have a blue thing. So, oh, you're not allowed to write in blue ink. It's like, why? I know I get told off with something like that. It's like, it doesn't photocopy. It's like, really? You sure about that? It doesn't photocopy? Because pharmacists write in green, so let's, if you want to go down that route. And now I remember walking onto the COVID ITU for the first time, and it was a case of find what you can to write with. There was a selection of pens of all sorts of colors, and it was just, there was no, all that stuff just went out the window. Like appraisals went out the window, and I mean, people were coming back, retired people were coming back to help out, and they hadn't practiced for quite a few years. So clearly, this whole portfolio appraisal thing, that just went out the window. It's like, yeah, just get people that can help. And so,
And did they fit in quite quickly and quite nicely after?
From what I'm aware, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we didn't I didn't know of people in our hospital who came back, but just seeing reports and reading things from other hospitals and things, it's like, yeah, they were more than welcome. There was no, oh, but you need to revalidate before we can accept you back, or we need to do this before. There was none of that. It was just like, yeah, look, let's just use common sense here, and we need bodies. We need able bodies who can help with this in any way, shape, or form, and they were using it. So all the kind of little bureaucracy side of things that just kind of went out, and yeah, it is slowly creeping back in. Inevitably, and that's a shame in a way, but.
Yeah. I mean, once the comfort kind of zone sets in, you start getting back to your easy habits, and you start, I guess, being a bit more fussy and maybe a bit more difficult. So that's been quite positive, to hear that people have come together and sort of worked together and got through these difficulties.
Oh, for sure, and it was lovely in a way to, and also the support you get from people outside of the hospital. I had people that I hadn't spoken to for a long time, just through distance and life and what have you, and they were messaging me, just sort of saying, if there's anything that can be done, that we can do, do you need food and all these things. It was actually quite, it made you feel very humble, reading these random messages from various people that you're like, oh gosh, wow,
Well, you've put me in my place, because I didn't send you anything over the last.
I think you did, actually. I'm pretty sure you did. Yeah, you
I
did.
feel a bit bad now.
No, you did. We spoke on the phone, so it's okay. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, it does make a difference. Other people
does.
don't realize that, even us as, so-called doctors or so-called superheroes, or, people at the vanguard of the firing line.
Yeah.
We may look tough, but we're not really. We are quite soft and
I tell you
cuddly.
what, I mean, I have to sort of take this, obviously. I mean, the nursing staff were, I mean, they felt the brunt of it, and just a massive thank you to them, because they a lot of people that had never worked in that situation before, in an intensive care situation, they were being redeployed left, right, and centre, and to do something very much outside their comfort zone, and they did brilliantly, and they were in PPE for hours and hours and hours, and after a few hours, believe me, it's very much you just need to sort of rip everything off and go, and they were doing it, with very, I didn't hear complaints or anything, and they were phenomenal. So yeah, without them, I think we would have been absolutely screwed, to be honest. So
yeah. And who supports them? That's the big question as well.
yeah, it's a difficult one. I think looking back, I think the one thing that has come about this is I've noticed always getting emails now for certain support groups, within the trust and within the hospital, and it's not just my trust. I'm pretty sure this is happening all over the country, because people are recognizing that, okay, this burnout thing, this is affecting people, and I think what COVID did do, if there's going to be some benefit, it highlighted the need for this support and to recognize certain things. Because, I think going back to your morale thing, morale is, it's not like it was pre-COVID. And I think one of the reasons for that is we're exhausted. People haven't had a proper break. And even if you've had annual leave because of COVID, we can't do the things that we would normally do to de-stress, and so you're on annual leave, but what do you do with it, at the moment? What can you do? Okay, things are a bit better now, but even traveling abroad now is hard, so I think that's all contributing to it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a speculative question, what's going to happen in the future, God knows. I mean, it's
yeah, your guess is as good as mine, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, they're supposed to lift restrictions on the 19th. I mean, this podcast will be going out after the 19th, and yet they still want us to wear masks and still want us to create distance and everything else. So it looks like it's around for a long time. But the voice of dissident voices are increasing. There's a lot more protests now against this. So I can only see this getting stronger and stronger over the next months and possibly next year. So there will be a lot of alternative ways of living. So that's going to be a big issue going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things shape out, actually. Just one from the government side of things, in terms of whether they change their stance or introduce different forms of restrictions, or whether they backtrack, and two, also just from the general public in terms of how they accept it. Because and this goes back to what I said right at the beginning, I have more sympathy with people going, I've had enough of this, and because I've had enough of it too. And okay, I'm probably not going to be one of the people demonstrating and doing all this stuff, but and that's not going to do anything to help numbers of rising cases, having all those people doing something like that. But I can understand the frustration, because it's not natural to be cooped up inside. It's not natural to have restrictions and things like that. It was needed for sure, because I think the best analogy I can come up with, or that I've heard, was, yes, it may not have prevented the total number. So say in 2 years, the same number of people perhaps would have passed away with COVID as, say, over the 2 years, as, say, would have happened over the first couple of months if we didn't have any restrictions. Maybe. But it's like McDonald's make however many billion burgers a year. If you go up to a drive-thru and say, can I have 5 million now? They're not going to be able to do it. They're not going to be able to deal with that. And it's the same with the NHS. It's like, you can't have, half a population coming into a hospital all at once with the same thing. It's not going to happen, and one of the reasons why, yes, the death rates have been high, but we forget how much higher would they have been if we didn't have the hospitals looking after them. Death rates are what they are with the numbers, including the people that we've saved in the NHS, so without it would have been higher.
Mm, mm.
I think it's often overlooked.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of passion, interests, enjoyment stuff, I guess that's gone out the window. It's all work
You
at the
know,
moment.
yeah. I mean, as we were saying earlier, it's like you can probably see on my desk because you've got exams coming up, and you know, this is nice breather in a way, just having a chat and. Passions for things, yeah, it's hard. So things like the podcasting and all that stuff, it's taken a hit because it's tough to balance everything. And work is slowly getting back to normal, but then it's a case of catching up on all the other things that you've been missing out on, you know, in the last year or so. And it's
What's
tough
the
to
first
juggle.
thing you're going to get back into?
Ooh, definitely the podcasting is going to be one of those things. So I used to love actually going to meet people. As much as Zoom and all these other things, that they're fantastic, and I've been able to chat to people who ordinarily I wouldn't be able to for distance wise. It's been fantastic, but I used to love actually meeting someone as we have in the past, you know, just give someone a microphone, have a chat, have a coffee together. And
You owe me
there's
a lunch,
something.
you know,
I know. I do. I have still got that in my mind. I know that.
and a trip to Cyprus as well.
Oh, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah, soon, hopefully. But yeah, all those things you can't do or couldn't do, and so things took a back seat because I found myself being less interested in doing a Zoom chat with someone that I actually just wanted to meet and all those things. But I would love to get back into chatting to more people in person.
Have you got any sort of guests in mind that's apart from me, of course?
Apart from yourself, no. I've got a few solo topics in
Right,
mind.
right.
So when I started out, it was a lot of solo talking, and the guests kind of came on later, and I get a few requests. They trickle in from time to time, and it's yeah. Sometimes you think they'll fit with the show. Other times it's not quite that type of podcast, you know. So you have to kind of, as you know, you have to look through things quite carefully before.
Oh, I don't. I just pop them on. I didn't know you were that careful.
Well,
I was wondering how I got on because I'm all over.
No, it's like when someone sends you something and say, from this PA person, they say, you should have this guest on there. They're phenomenal. This, and you look into it and you're thinking, you just want to sell this new product that you've created. You know, there's literally no science in this whatsoever. You've literally just taken a chance here, and it's like I'm not sure if I can put that on. You know,
What if the numbers sound right? You know, what if you're getting big bucks for this? It must be worth a few big bucks.
No one's gonna pay me, Haidar, to come on. One day, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, because the money's enticing. You see, you get all kinds of offers, and sometimes the money does get you carried away.
For sure. I mean,
the scenario is, some egghead comes along and gives you some kind of whatever BS about something, but you get a Bugatti for a month.
Oh yeah, and I mean, if that that's a tough one. I'd like to say
that means yes.
I'd like to say I'm going to stick to my integrity, but at the moment, it's my podcast is not big enough for anyone to be offering any of that. So
yeah. Have you ridden in a Bugatti yet?
Have I ridden in one? No, and not the new type things. Not the Veyron, Chiron. No, I haven't been in one of those. I've been in, I think, the older classic ones at certain points. But nothing that would be Instagram worthy, shall we say?
Of course, because it's all about Instagram these days. But I mean, what is it about the Bugatti that sort of really
I
stokes your
take
passion?
you're referring to the model thing. Well, it was to be honest, I like I love cars, I love motorsport, and I love engineering actually. And it was, I very nearly chose engineering instead of medicine. And one of the things that stopped me was, one, I was and am terrible at mathematics. So, and I tried my hand at A-level physics and, or AS physics at the time. And I realized very quickly that it was not something that my brain would be very happy to continue. So that was one thing. But I do love how things work. I love how, just the basic engineering principles. I love all of that. And so things that have certain passions in them. So, people ask me, why do you like certain cars? You can't drive that fast in real life. It's like, it's not about how fast you can drive in real life. It's just about this is what man can achieve, and or women can achieve, actually, more.
Yeah, you got to stick that in as well.
I have to, but thankfully there are getting more, like in Formula One, and there's Formula W series and all these type of things. So, which is great, and so it's a nice thing, and I just so for me, some people it might be like it's the car. For me, it's like, okay, it's a bit more, Yeah.
And you've got the Porsche behind you as well.
Yes,
that's a racing Porsche, the GT3, I think.
It
Porsche
is.
911.
I have actually had the pleasure of driving one of those, so that was nice.
What's it like?
It was a beautiful car. Lovely in terms of it was very controlled in terms of the day. It was one of those track day things, and I think I was getting told off for not changing gear early enough, and I was,
you try and trash the engine.
No, it was they have this expectation of you changing gear at 4,000 RPM, and it's like, no, this car needs to go up to 6, 7, 8, not that. So they try and control it that way, so it's limited in terms of what you can get from it and get a good feel. But in terms of the noise and the acceleration, it's there, and it was a beautiful car.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully those days can come back, and you can, get your mojo back and hear you on the waves again.
Oh, that'll be soon enough. I hope. I think my last episode was about a month ago now, and I feel it's a shame, because you get people writing to you saying, oh, thank you for that episode, or you get some lovely feedback, and they're kind of waiting for the next one. Albeit it's a small audience, but it's a loyal one, if that makes sense. So they're kind of wanting the next episode, and you kind of feel a little bit guilty in that that you're not producing this content that people are looking forward to or want to hear. So,
an obligation. You have an obligation to a certain extent, and that sort of pushes you in certain directions.
You do, and I can see. I was watching a video on YouTube. This guy, content creator, lots of followers and what have you. And there is this thing called creator burnout, and albeit at a much smaller scale than these YouTubers and what have you. But it's definitely a thing. And they were talking about the pressures of creating new content, because they've got a million followers, million subscribers, and they invest their time, and they expect that every 3 days or every week you're going to have something out there, and then left with a blank screen, it's they find other people.
I mean, there's a shag burnout as well. Even the most fun of things, you can go through burnout with that as well, trust me.
I've missed you, Haidar.
Yeah, it's a real thing. So you've got to shut down and and regroup and come back. It doesn't have to be stronger, but just come back to a level of passion that
of course,
people enjoy you at.
of course, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's weird because initially when you start, you have all these like hundreds of ideas, and you exhaust them really quickly. Actually, you don't realize it's like when people say, oh yeah, before you start putting content out there, make sure you've got your next 20, 30 episodes planned before you even start your first one. And I used to think, well, that's just rubbish. I'm not going to sit here planning 30 episodes. I'm just going to put out one and take it from there. And then you realize, actually, they had a point, actually, because coming up with new ideas, new topics every week.
I mean, it's ebbs and flows, you see. I mean, it's ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And, in the world of creativity, you can't create all the time. I mean, even God had a bit of a break. So, I mean, there is this constant upping and downing and leveling out. And, we are human at the end of the day.
But interestingly, I saw this. I was watching a Jordan Peterson lecture, and it was slightly demoralizing in a way because he was essentially saying it's quite an old one. He's teaching to a class, and he was essentially saying how we think of ourselves as, oh, this is a creative person, and he brought up there's a certain criteria that they came up with in a study and in this literature, and it was, okay, you think you're creative, are you a musician? Yes. Have you performed in front of an audience, for example? And it's like, well, I'm a musician, but no, I haven't done that. You get 0 points. Are you an author? Yes. Okay. Have you published anything? Well, no. Have you had a peer-reviewed journal? No. So again, you get 0. So all these things that you think you're creative, actually, unless you've had success, actual proper success, you can argue that you're not being classified as a creative individual. And I was watching this, and I thought, that's a shame, actually, because I would think I'm a creative person, but actually, in the whole scheme of things, not really. Now, I would love to ask him if because that was quite an old thing, does that relate to modern day times where you've got YouTube, you've got podcasts, you've got Instagram, you've got all these other mediums in which you can express yourself and show your creativity? Does, say, having 1 million followers on Instagram, does that make you more creative? Or having so many thousand downloads in your podcast, does that make you a creative person? And these weren't put in this study, obviously, because it's so old, but it's just a food for thought, really. I was thinking about that.
I mean, he is quite active on the internet, so it's worth commenting on his video there. And then he does respond to a lot of questions. And I mean, what I understood from his work is that there are a number of temperaments. There are 5 main temperaments, and we're on a scale on those temperaments. And creativity is related to openness, which is a temperament. And then there's a scale, so anything from 0 to 100.
Yeah.
In terms of openness, and I think my openness level is in the middle somewhere. So one can argue that that's pretty open, to a certain degree.
How
And
do you measure that? How do you?
I mean, he's got a website where you can actually do his tests.
Oh, well, okay.
I mean, I'll send you the maybe we should get some sponsoring for this podcast from Jordan Peterson. Mate, you're going to get an extra sale here. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of interesting looking at that. And in terms of personality and temperaments, it is not an exact science, because all of these psychometric tests are very much statistically loaded. But apparently the only thing that has some validity statistically is the IQ test. So the IQ test, which looks at abstract thinking, does have validity in terms of general cognitive abilities.
Okay.
Which is quite depressing for modern society, because what that tells us is that we are not all equal. and that we're not, if you work hard enough, you'll get there. Well, actually, no, you won't, because there are different levels of cognitive ability. People who have better cognitive ability and better IQ are more successful, because that's the best indicator of success. And he argues that IQ, which can be measured through abstract tasks through the IQ test, that correlates with conscientiousness, which is another of the main temperaments, which has been developed through statistical methods. So in a way, conscientiousness can be developed, but abstract thinking,
that I think that happens,
which is quite damaging for this kind of equality and equity and however you want to call it, because some people are geniuses, most of us are in the middle somewhere, and then the rest of us are below. And what do you do about the below? It's it's a massive question.
It's one of those things where everyone, even when you're talking about sort of the IQ side of things, it's like, okay, so say someone with a very, very good IQ, they might be intelligent in that regard, and be very conscientious and succeed very well. But actually, if you ask them to do something simple, like change the wheel on a car, they couldn't do it. And it's almost like, and sometimes when I see people in the past, maybe, say, I need to work hard and do this so that I don't end up, doing this. And it's like, but could you do what they do? And it's like, well, if you're so clever, why can't you do that? Why can't you change the wheel? Why can't you change your oil? Why can't you, repair your bike? And so it's sometimes not just about the IQ. It's actually just about what you're good at, and recognizing that, and just not, looking down on someone just because, they might not have done something in an academic life, but they can achieve, they can do all these things that, even the best academic can't,
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. We can't dumb them down, that's sort of one thing, but we can't make the opposite true either. We can't raise what's sort of unraisable.
Sure.
But we still need them. I mean, someone with an IQ of 60, they can be a very good, they can do a very good job, particularly vocational jobs. They'll be very good at that, and they'll contribute really well. But you can't expect them to do quantum physics or, do complicated abstract work.
Sure.
And for people to say even the 60 IQ should have an equal outcome in order to become a physics professor. Reality doesn't, says otherwise.
I mean, the equality of outcome thing is, that's just it's almost ridiculous in a way. And I know he equality of opportunity is absolutely,
I mean, the doors are open.
there.
I mean, I think, no one should close the door to you and, stop you from walking into places. Whether that happens or not, then, it's choices, isn't it? I mean, I could have walked into opportunities of, great, political opportunities. Would I have been happy? Probably not. Would I have had the best political acumen and Machiavellian traits? Probably not. Would I have been? do you know what I mean? There's so many other factors. I wouldn't have walked into there. So
because me really wants to see you as the politician, Haidar, just to see
just to get in trouble.
Honestly, it would be magic.
Well, I mean, I was one of my friends, and he says, the reason why it's sort of fun being with you, because I want to see what explodes next. What else comes out. So
there's never a dull moment.
I don't know. Well, what can you do?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's I'm glad that you're sort of okay, and that you're back, and that you've put on some weight, and you've put on a bit of facial hair as well, maybe somewhere there.
Oh, it's just laziness, but yeah. For
And
me at least.
you know, good luck with your exams.
Thank you.
I know you love your exams, and you're absolutely awesome on them
Uh,
and with them, and you know that goes really well. Um,
Thanks.
what's the plan sort of next year? What do you see yourself doing?
Plan for next year. Well, hopefully with the exam been and done. Hopefully from work side can progress further up. Continue career. Still stay in anesthetics, and yeah, we'll see where life outside of work takes us. It's almost been hard to plan, actually, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Uh, Maybe I should be looking a little bit forward to things and planning things, but yeah, it's just been a little bit tricky. So we'll see.
good stuff. It's been great, Paul, and
Thank you, Hector.
look forward to hearing you on your podcast.
Ah, definitely. Thank you very much. Lovely chat to you as always.